If you're anything like I was, you've got a pedal board full of mismatched patch cables that are a little spotty from gig to another. You're always hunting for one that's going bad. They don't fit. You can't squeeze enough pedals on your pedal board. That's how I was until I discovered Tour Gear Design's patch cables. They're the smallest patch cables in the game. They're rock solid, extremely dependable, and I love what they make. And now I've partnered with Tour Gear Designs to get you 10% off your order by using the affiliate code down below in the description box. You can get 10% off using code 40WATT, 40WATT, but this deal gets even better. For my Patreon supporters, you actually are eligible for 20% off. You have to register with the same email address you use on Patreon and message the company, say you're one of my Patreon supporters, and you can get 20% off your order with Tour Gear Designs, the best patch cables in the game. This podcast is made possible in part through a partnership with TrueFire. TrueFire is the most comprehensive guitar learning experience on the internet, with over 51,000 guitar lessons from the best educators in the world. It makes TrueFire the #1 most trusted music education resource for guitar players. We as guitar players sometimes get fixated on the gear that we play, and we neglect the skill level that we play. And many of us have a hard time finding instructors locally. TrueFire bridges that gap. You can find my affiliate link below to get 40% off with my code 40WATT of your first purchase through TrueFire. Learn, practice, play, TrueFire. This podcast is made possible by the support of many wonderful people over on Patreon. If you would like to support this show and help make sure it keeps going, you can go over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 a month, you can help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you for all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip. I am your host. Super excited to be talking to you today. It's been a couple of weeks. Y'all know how it goes. Summer gets busy, the schedule gets wild, and I have to do other things. And so it's become a running trend. Now we're in season 3. It seems to be a running trend that in the summers, episodes become every other week, and that may just be the way it is in seasons moving forward. Just because with my job, I actually get busier during the summers at work. So before we get started, as usual, I'm going to thank by name all of my Patreon supporters. My goal is one day this list to be too long for me to be able to do this, but for now it's still slightly manageable. So thank you to my Patreon supporters: Henry Klubakowski, Brian May, but not that Brian May, Heinrich Nordvang of Nordvang Custom Pedals, Tony DeGraw, Steve Rao of the 60 Cycle Hum Podcast, Andrew Bimson, Abe Matthews, Jordan Glash, Duncan Watson, Andy Johns, David Evangelista of the Guitar Dads Podcast, who I co-hosted with this past week. Go back, check that episode out. Actually co-hosted with the other host, Matt, Blake Jefferson, Nick Call, Andrew Hensley, Alan Gresham, Dan Pilver of Lewitt Audio, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop Podcast, Andy Koning, Jim Burns, Tom Kelly, Heath Batt, Ben Fair of Electromotive Sound Company, Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Jeffrey Walks, and Kyle Harris. Thank you so much for all of your support. You help keep this show going and keep me from losing money doing it.
What a lovely bunch of people.
It is. It's an outstanding crew. And, you know, some of them are over on the Discord. Some of them aren't. There is a Discord server for this podcast that you do not need to be a Patreon supporter to go over and hang out on. You can find all the links over at 40wattpodcast.com. Done. Self-shill. Finished. This week, you've already seen the headline. Y'all, this isn't breaking. I'm not pushing anything away. I'm not burying the lead here. Y'all seen that Joe Branton is back with us for another episode. Joe, how you doing?
I am all good. Thank you so much, Philip, for having me on another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. It is always you're my favorite person to podcast with, so it's lovely to come across onto your show, especially when you've done so many of my shows this year.
Yeah, I have done several years this year. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it because it gives me some perspective I don't have.
Right.
You know, my gigging experience and my gear experience is very US centric, and very blues centric.
It's one
So
of the things I love actually about whenever we get to podcast is those. Obviously, everything's so very global these days, but it's lovely having those little subtle differences about the gear that is in and around London and the south of England, and the gear that's over in Mississippi and the States. I love all those. Of course, we all have the same major things available, but
oh sure.
when you were talking to me about the amp that we'll talk about on the podcast, the little pawn shop amplifier that you've purchased,
Yeah.
that sort of thing would never show up in London.
Yeah, so let's kick off with that. So I'm not on like a crazy gear buying binge, but I am sort of like had some things happen, some money freed up, and I've been on this like I want to find something cool. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any needs.
Right.
Let's be honest. Most of this is all want, right? Like I really need like an amp, a backup amp, and a couple of guitars. That's like all I absolutely need. But I've been on this everything. I've got some cool stuff, but I want something that's like interesting, vibey, got a voice. And yesterday I was on a road trip for work, and on my way back I stopped at a music store in Tupelo, Mississippi, Tupelo Consignment Music. And I always love going there because you never know what they're going to have. And I was wandering around, and I looking at a bunch of stuff, and there's some stuff I was sort of interested in, and they've got a couple of cool things. Like they've got a black panel dual Showman with the matching 2x12 cab there.
That's very cool.
It is very cool, and it's reasonably priced. But at the same time, I was like, I need another 100-watt amp, like I need, snowshoes in Mississippi. So I walking around, and then I noticed this. They've got these old like vintage K and Silvertone and some other of the various department store brand guitars on stands. And just talking to the guys that work there, they even know. They're like, yes, some of those are just wall hangers. Like they're not playable. There's a couple that were a little playable to sound cool. If you're a slide guy or gal, there's a lot of really cool guitars that you could play. But then behind them, there was this little combo. And at first I thought it was a speaker cab. And I went over there, and it's not. It's a K504 vibrato leader. I'll post pictures on Instagram in the next day or two. But it's this wild little early 60s one. I think it's a 1x10. The speaker looks a little small to me, but I think it is a 1x10. It's like 5 watts with a 6V6, a 5Y3 rectifier tube, and a couple of 12AX7s. So that was the first thing I did when I found it. I was like, what tubes does this use? Am I going to have a hard time tracking down replacement tubes? Because I didn't want something like super obscure, like the vintage Ampegs. The Ampeg Jet used a obscure tube that like super expensive to track down and replace. But yeah, I asked them. They said it works. We plug it in. It's got a field coil speaker instead of a regular speaker, so it's actually got a transformer mounted to the speaker frame. Yeah, that's all the technical information you're getting from me. If you want more about field coil speakers, go listen to The Truth About Vintage Amps with Skip Simmons and Jason Verlinde. They talk about them all the time. But yeah, plugged it in. Tremolo's nice and strong. Sounds great. It's super vibey. It's 5 watts, so you just crank it up to 10 and you go.
Lovely.
But that kind of stuff shows up here. You don't get that kind of stuff there.
It's those awesome old 60s amplifiers where you've just got like a master tone and the volume control, and just you'd have got a master tone, you've just got a volume control, no gain controls, and that volume is usable the whole way up. You don't end up, obviously so many modern amps, everyone's afraid of going past 12, so people don't design volume controls to be linear. So, nothing's really usable past sort of 1, 2 o'clock. But those old amps, they're designed to work the whole way round. So you've got all these sounds available off of really simple controls. And of course, what did he pay for the K504? 504?
It was, it's a 504. I paid under, I won't give an exact price. And for those listening in the future, this is August of 2023 pricing. So I paid under $400.
Yeah, that's it. That's what those things go for. But that's all part of, K don't have the name that Fender and Gibson and Gretsch have.
Exactly.
And you can almost see those names like tear down with vintage stuff. Like Guild stuff will always be reasonably-ish priced. But then you go
Which is
down a
wild
tier
to me.
again. Yeah, I know. Well, tell me about it. Yeah, absolutely. And then, a tier down, you have companies like K, and of course, I've spoken about it a billion times with you and on the Guitar Nerds podcast. But anything made in the 70s in Japan, which was essentially reverse engineered American stuff, is still going for incredibly cheap, despite the fact that it is flawlessly, brilliant vintage gear.
Yeah, exactly. I did the conversion, by the way, for
Yeah.
I do have quite a few UK listeners, and it's probably your fault, but I I paid less than £300.
Yeah, that's
To put that in GBP. So
yeah.
yeah, it's great
The
that
price of a Boss
exists.
Katana.
Yeah, exactly. For the price of a Boss Katana, I got a vintage American-made amplifier.
Valve amp with bias
Yeah,
tremolo.
Valve amplifier. Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, I've got a couple of really cool old. Actually, I don't have a couple anymore. I sold one. I've got one it's from the like late '60s, early '70s. It's this made by National, the resonator company.
Right.
Although I think they were having someone else make them, because I'm pretty sure it's a Chinese made or Asian made. But it's a solid state bass amp, and the head is about the size of a loaf of bread, maybe smaller.
Right.
And the cabinet for it is a 112 cabinet with 4 portholes, open back, and it's maybe as wide. I don't know. It's as wide as a pedal. Like it's a very narrow, small cab, and it was meant to be this like little home practice amp, right? And I found it in a what would we call this store? It's like it's not a thrift store. It's not truly an antique. It's junk-teak.
Right.
That's what it is. It's not an antique shop. It's a junk-teak shop. So it's like, people bring all sorts of random crap in, and a lot of it is just crap. But I picked that thing for under $100 because it didn't work. And so I brought it home. I fixed it. It had some leads that just needed to be resoldered on the inside, soldered on the inside for you. You're welcome. So that's it. It turned out great. It's a lot of fun to play. I just play guitar into it because it's like, I don't know, it's like 25, 30 solid state watts. It's not loud.
Wow. I think that's kind of the thing, coming back to what gear's available where. It's probably just, we'd never see anything like that. I'm sure it's partially due to the vastness of the United States of America, but also because you were the home of so many musical innovations for equipment. It just means that there were so many brands trying different things, and across such a each state almost, I guess, is going to have their own companies trying their own things, whereas we just get that sort of centralized thing. We see a lot of great stuff from like Fenton Weil and any of the old like Burns guitars, Shergold, companies like that. You get cool things like that, but I've probably named 90% of the UK brands that we have that are vintage.
Well, I think it was the last time you were on, you hipped me to the Watkins Copycat.
Yes.
And I was like, I've never heard of this. I had never seen one. And I swear, since you mentioned it, I have seen like 10 of them posted on Instagram. Like, I was like, I've never heard of it ever, never seen it, nothing. You mention it, and then boom, there's like 10 of them. It's been a weird world. So now I want one of those at some point, because
they're great.
I love tape delay.
I feel like I missed the boat with them over here. Jay Cross, one of the old Guitar Nerds podcasts, he had one, and I think he picked it up. He picked it up probably a decade ago for, even 10 years ago, I feel like we weren't quite going through the same retro renaissance that we are now. And he picked up a Watkins Copycat probably for £100. Certainly not a lot of money.
Oh my gosh.
And now I think over here, they're going for around £500. They're going for enough that I would sooner buy a T-Rex replicator Because I know I can get replacement tapes for it and things like that, because they're roughly
Yeah.
the same price.
Yeah, there's only oh no, that's not even in the US. I looked on Reverb to see what they're going for. There's only one and it's in Italy. And
Right.
so yeah, that's just not happening.
There's one in my
Um,
local village guitar shop down the road. Well,
are
town
you
guitar shop
serious?
in the town round the corner, Worthing. I popped into We Have Sound Music in there the other day to check out this Bitzer Esquire that they have, and they had a Watkins
Mhm.
copycat on the side. I mean, they've also got some fella who builds effects pedals into old cameras and cigar boxes, and then sells them
Oh,
through the shop as well. And they're all like around 50 quid. So, then he's not claiming they're going to be amazing, but they're very
right.
cool, very interesting. So I'm going to pick up one of those pedals. But yeah, Watkins Copycat just sitting on the side. It's one of those shops though where there's like some WEM amp combo that I've never heard of. In the corner gathering dust. Those shops get the same as I bet yours do with with things like K amplifiers.
Right.
You'll see these old random like high watts, Wems, Watkins, things like that, just knocking around, gathering dust in the corner because, of course, everyone wants a Daphne Blue Telecaster and a shiny. I don't know what amps people want these days. Probably still Fenders, probably still Deluxes. I bet that's the
I
best
still
selling.
feel like yeah, I still feel like the majority of amps out there and amps coming out are still based on Fender, 50s and 60s circuits.
Yeah.
That
It,
it's almost boring. It's it's just it's a little I think of it as boring, but then I also realize, oh, I try to make every amp I play sound like a 60s Fender.
sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I talk about it often, about what gear I see on the gigging circuit, but it is still very
mhm.
dominated by Fender. It's interesting seeing, because I play prog stuff and I get booked with math bands, but I'll also get booked with maybe prog metal bands or tech bands as well. So I see the sort of different gear, and it's interesting to see how much more modern stuff like tech stuff. I guess in the same way that we have this renaissance for headless guitars,
Oh,
satin
sure.
necks are very big, extended range fan frets. Those sort of things are very popular. Incredibly high output pickups. So of course, like amplifiers, we're seeing Helix be very successful, Kemper be very successful. I'm certainly seeing more Kemper than anything else. Neural DSP, I know the Quad Cortex has kind of got a sort of is maybe having a bit of a mixed later period. Certainly when it came out, everyone ran to get it, and now I feel like it's I'm not sure it's quite doing the nut. I have no idea how many they're selling, dear
Well,
listener, but
I do know that Quad Cortex just announced. I want to try to remember when they announced it. It's within the last couple of weeks that their goal is by the end of this year, the plugins, the neural plugins will run on the Quad Cortex.
it's been a long time for that not to be the
Yeah.
case. When
Yeah, they promised that early on,
yeah,
very early on. They said that they would eventually do that, and now they're saying that it will, but they said that before too.
yeah,
So I'm not throwing shade at Neural. I think they
no,
make a great product, but so the interesting thing for me is that what you see on the gigging circuit, you're seeing some of these things.
yeah,
But for me, I'm trying to think. I think I've yet to go to see live music, whether it's just local band, or touring bands, or even big national acts. Right? I've yet to see a band play ampless.
right.
That's not a church worship band or a funk like wedding band. You know what I mean?
Is it
I've
genre specific? Do you think? Because you obviously you play a lot more blues shows, and
yeah,
I feel
Americana
like
country kind of stuff.
exactly, and I feel like there's some integrity to the equipment when it comes to those genres. Also, there is
Hmm.
particular gear that works very well for those, and they're steeped in history as well. So people want to play those classic things. For what it's worth, most prog is still steeped in at least the 70s. So most of the gear is that sort of time period esque
Yeah.
in sound and look and everything. But when it comes to those modern prog bands, yeah, there it is a lot of Antler stuff. I still think Kemper are
Yeah.
winning. Actually, I think they're they seem to be on top with certainly with
That's
like the
interesting.
more professional bands.
And I'm gonna have to take your word on that one because I don't see Kempers. I don't.
Right.
I've still to this day, I think not in a shop I've seen, like, could put my hand on a Kemper maybe 3 times ever.
Right.
And even then, I say not in a shop. I can't remember when I saw. I'm sure I've seen them in shops. I must have seen them in a shop, right? But I and most of the times that I've actually seen a real Kemper was when I was hanging out with Scott in Chicago from
Right.
the Effects Loop because he has one. That's the one I've been able to see. But I wonder if the Kemper is just. I know a lot of people say they use them in studios,
Yeah.
and I know they're big in the studio world. I wonder if that's what it is. There's just not as many people taking them out live here for me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the bands that whenever I think about bands that play Kempers, good friends of mine, a band called Rolo Tomasi, they play a Kemper setup, but it's also because their drummer is sequencing everything, including lights and
Mm,
including pedal changes. I think pedal changes are part of it. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but I think the entire thing, because it's running off of a backing track, and I assume they have supporting parts as part of the backing track as well, makes sense to have Kemper because you can program
yeah.
that all in, and it frees you up to perform and bounce around the stage as much as possible. So that I understand its purpose. It definitely has a purpose beyond the tones there for professional bands looking to do the whole shebang. But yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes total sense, and I think they sound good. But I've said this, innumerable times on the podcast. They don't make me excited to play guitar.
yeah,
So they're like the Helix world. I'm actually having to go back into the digital realm a little bit. I had divested myself of digital solutions
right,
because I just wasn't excited. I wasn't using them live. But one of my regular gigs that's playing for uh, some high school and middle school show choirs. I play guitar because they play with live bands. They hire me out to play those. The band I play with is going direct in ear for the next season because they hired on. The reason we didn't do it, I mean, it makes sense for this show to be direct in ears. Little equipment as you can carry is great. Um, but it's also a lot of moving parts, and they didn't have someone to like oversee that technical side of the audio.
uh-huh.
And this year they do. So like, okay, we're gonna do it. So that means I've got to get back into. I'm probably just gonna get a Helix again. Just go back
Oh, did
Helix.
you actually you got rid of the Helix completely?
Yeah, oh yeah, I got rid
Sold
of
it
all
off.
of it.
Wow.
So I'll pick up another one. It's fine. I'm antsy about picking one up though, and I'll be honest. The real reason is that I'm worried is that I'm real worried I'm about to pick one up and they're about to finally announce Helix 2 or something like that. And
Maybe it has
not
been
that,
around a while. But the price
yeah,
has slumped on the pre-owned market, which is great, for buying them.
yeah.
Terrible for selling them, but it's probably the most affordable professional digital amp solution you can pick up at the moment out of all the those competitors, out of Kemper, Neural, etc., Axe Effects,
Oh, I
whatnot.
think so. And I still think this is controversial and people want to fight with me over it. But come fight me. I mean, it's all subjective anyway. So if you really want to fight me over a subjective opinion, but I think the Helix has the better effects of any of them.
When it comes to
I,
effects, I completely
yes.
agree. I think you talk about um, being excited to play music. I found when I had my Helix, I used to have it plumbed into like my desk setup, so it was on the floor beneath my desk. And
Sure.
actually, for sort of writing stuff, I was doing a random sort of side project that required like a lot of ambient guitar with lots of delays, and being able to build big, complicated, reverby delays and then assign certain parameters to the foot switch was very easy and very
Hmm.
quick, and it gave me a very expressive palette of tools and I love how easy it is to do things like, send different tones to different outs on the amplifier, or on the pedal, on the Helix itself.
Yeah.
Everything like that I loved. It was when I wanted to select the Vox AC30 Fawn, and we spoke about this before, and
Yeah.
before you change it, the setting that it comes up with as you load it before you change it sounds nothing like a Vox AC Fawn. It sounds the same
Yep.
as everything else, because they seem to have geared them all for drive and metal. And then I'm sort of there messing around with a Vox AC, being like, how do I make this sound like a Vox AC? That was the thing that annoyed me about it. But that's just speed of setting something up. That's not a fault with the product. That's a
They are
preference.
all gained up a little bit
Yeah.
to me. Like every model is a little overgained, like
Yeah.
when you first pull it up. But they did introduce one of the, back when I still had Helix, they did introduce in one of the patches where you could favorite something. So you could set an amp the way you wanted and then favorite your version of that amp. So that or pedal or effect, whatever. And that way, when you go to pull something into a new scene, snapshot, setting, whatever, preset, when you go to pull it in, instead of pulling in the base amp, the base model amp, you can pull in your favorite version of that amp.
Yeah.
And it'll have your settings automatically.
That's very good. As with all products of this type, it's going to be knowing your way around it. That's how you get the most. I mean, that's the same with anything, I guess. But where
100%.
a fantastic simple analog drive pedal has volume, gain, and tone, the Helix has a billion controls.
Or one of my favorite, not my favorite. I do have a favorite gain pedal, drive pedal. It is still the king of tone, but
It's
that's
the
a
king of
whole other
tone.
ball game.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
one of my favorites though is the Mythos. It was called the Airlane Drive. They call it the 210 Direct Drive now, or something like that.
Right.
Because he had some more circuit boards for him. It's literally a dual boost overdrive that has one knob per channel.
Right.
Give me one knob. Just make it sound good, and then give me a volume.
Yeah,
That's what I want.
I love the simplicity in a gain control that's just enhancing your amplifier's tone. Because realistically, when you set up an amp, you've probably set that up how you want to sound. So if you're giving too many controls on a drive pedal, I appreciate that, dear listener, if you want a drive pedal to completely change your sound, then obviously you want the different. But if you want your core sound to just excite and expand your amplifier's tone, then keeping it simple. It's why I love the exotic effects. They did their EP booster and they did a buffer as well, and their buffer pedal had just a little gain control on it, and I mean, it was fantastic. Like, they were mini pedals, but they were rugged. They weighed a ton. They were a little deeper than a normal mini pedal. They had loads of little dip switches on the side, so you could be like, oh, I also want the buffer pedal to give a slight mid boost, so you could just click that. I realize that now is the reverse of me saying simplicity, but nonetheless, you could just leave those controls alone and it still sounds fantastic. But I don't know what my favorite drive pedal is. Oh, I need to.
You don't have a favorite drive? You oh, come on, you got to have. Actually, the King of Tone is my favorite pedal. Period.
Really?
But yeah, it's and so I've talked about this, and I've got a video that's going to be coming out 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. Look for it, not next Monday, but the Monday after.
Right.
I've got a video coming out where I compare the King of Tone to the Wampler Pantheon Deluxe, which is their like dual blues breakery thing. And I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler for the video, just because I've been really playing with the Wampler. Actually, I've got it right over here because I had it swapped out for a moment. The Pantheon Deluxe. Oh my gosh, focus! Come on, camera. There we go. Close enough. Yeah, viewers, I know that was not actually in focus. It's fine. My camera decided to dump all of my settings, and so I'm working on it. But the Wampler, this is going to be controversial. The Wampler does everything the King of Tone does, and more.
Oh.
It just does. This thing sounds incredible. It's got a few extra features. It's got external toggles for voicing and overdrive, distortion, boost, those kinds of things. it's got MIDI. I mean, it's a drive pedal with MIDI
Yeah,
for switching
that's
it on and
fine.
off. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a thing, but the King of Tone is still my favorite pedal.
Right. I see.
And the reason is it sounds incredible. It always has worked in every setting I've ever had to use it. And there is something to having one and having had to work so hard to get it. I've never bought one used. I've only ever bought one by waiting on the list
How
for
long
it.
was the waiting list?
So I've gone through the list 3 times now. Again, it's my favorite pedal. I did sell one of them that I bought, and because I was in, money crunch, things happen. I needed money, a few years ago. But so the first time I went through the list, it was 2 years. Then I went through the list, and it was 3.5 years. And then I went through the list, and it was 4 years.
Right.
And now the list is up to like 5 or 5.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants one right now.
Yeah. So what I'm telling people, just buy this. Seriously,
Pantheon.
just buy the Pantheon Deluxe. It's incredible. Put your name on the list. Buy the Pantheon until then. It's fine. Do what you want to do. But if you're getting it because you don't think you can get that sound anywhere else, I hate to tell you that's wrong. But I want to back up. Well, I'm going to back up too. We're going to make you pick a favorite drive pedal.
Okay.
Today, what's your favorite drive pedal?
Well,
it can change tomorrow.
The overdrive on my pedal board. So for guitar, we won't talk about bass. So for guitar,
yeah.
the overdrive on my pedal board for guitar is the Chase Bliss Automatone preamp.
Oh, so your favorite is the everything pedal.
But I only use one setting. I don't use anything else. So, and it's always on. It's the tone because my amp setup is a Tweed Blues Junior, and I just run it in there to excite it. My reason for thinking about changing is one, it's an expensive pedal. It's a £750 pedal I'm using for one setting. It sounds fantastic. It takes up a lot of room on the pedal board, and also is there something else that will do this just as well for substantially less? Because the thing that makes that Chase Bliss so good is obviously the options, the versatility of it, the fact that it's a fuzz and a drive and a preamp. It's got all of those things going on. So I think I just want something simple. I want something minimal. There are things that I need to A/B. I probably should when I come to put my board back together, because I'm not gigging on guitar until October. But I think I feel like Great Eastern Effects Co. Do you know them? You heard of them?
I've heard of them.
Very small UK brands. They do 3 pedals essentially. They do a designer drive, which is a drive pedal with like a versatile width control. So the idea being, I don't know, if you're running a telly into a deluxe and you want to sound a bit soupier, a bit more Les Pauly, then you can boost that width and get quite a fat sound, and vice versa. So it's supposed to be like, design the drive pedal that you want via the width control, because ultimately that's the thing that changes a lot on drive pedals is how thin or fat they are. The other thing they do is the small speaker overdrive, which is probably the one that stands a good chance of winning, because it's designed to sound like that sort of champ in a recording studio style sound, which I absolutely love. And it's that sort of edge of breakup, organic, dynamic, bluesy, rocky, Clapton-y sort of tone that I would like. So that stands a good chance. The other one is they also do a silicon focus fuzz, which actually works really well on low gain settings as a drive pedal as well. So I've got all 3 of those.
I was just looking them up. I was just looking, and I realized why I've heard of them, because you've talked about the designer drive.
I've done some videos on them as well for them on their channel.
That focus fuzz is real interesting to me, but I'm a fuzz junkie. This is terrible. I love fuzz pedals. I have more than I want to talk about. I counted them a couple of weeks ago. And the music I play typically doesn't use fuzz.
Right.
Yeah. I keep buying them and not using them live.
So that is exactly the same. I love fuzz pedals. They're fantastic to mess around on. But I play, the band I play guitar in is just with my partner, Emma, and she plays piano, and I play an edge of breakup Gres Mendocino for the bulk of it into a Blues Junior. There's not especially the need for fuzz, but it's why I really like the Great Eastern Focus fuzz, is because it's incredibly dynamic. And because it's dynamic, you can, and I really like that. I like, the reason I don't ever turn that Chase Bliss pedal off is because I don't want to use pedals to change my sound. I want to dig in when there's a big bit. And the Focus Fuzz is a fantastic tool for that. It cleans up nicely at low volume, so you can still get that, there's just that rasp coming through when you play softly. And when you've got something as, you need a guitar to be dynamic, which the Gres Mendocino, the Lola gold foils in that, they're incredibly responsive. And when you dig in, you can get that lovely, it's a silicon fuzz, but it sounds, it's very germanium in sound and texture, and you get that lovely that all those harmonics sort of fighting each other in the air, that thing that you get with a fuzz pedal. You can get that, but you can also lay off. So I don't know, I'm sort of talking myself right now into maybe my my drive pedal is a fuzz pedal, but I don't know, I need to A/B some stuff. I need the clarity of a drive as well. And
see, that's always been the thing for me. Like, I've had gig nights where it was like a low key gig, or which most of mine are blues cover gigs. So I did this one gig where I decided, this is back when I was still playing a Strat, which I typically don't play a Strat anymore, but I decided I was going to show up to this gig with my Strat, a Super Reverb, and a Analog Man Sunface, just a fuzz face, essentially just a fuzz face. And that was going to be my whole rig. And I was going to never turn the Sunface off. Was the goal. I was never going to turn it off. And I did it. It took work. It took a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun having to play with the volume control that much to really be that. I don't know that I could have done it in the gigs where I'm also the singer. Though.
Right. Yeah.
Because
I can't
split that attention. I need to be able to hit a pedal, like I need to be able to not look down and hit a pedal to change my sound.
Exactly.
When
you're singing, the guitar just needs to be functional. Everything just needs to do its job. You're not sort of looking to make everything just perfect. But when you're just playing guitar, you can put that focus into just making sure this bit sounds exactly how it should for this room and this performance. But
that's what I need. I need another band where I'm just the guitar player. That I haven't done that in a while, and I need that again in my life. Because it's a lot of fun to have that just opportunity to be expressive in a way that I can't when I'm also focusing on singing and remembering lyrics and making sure that everybody remembers the parts to this song that we never got to rehearse, or those kinds of things. I'd like to be able to play guitar, because it's a totally different experience. So I want to back up though, because we've had a conversation actually this week after your Guitar Nerds podcast episode, where you were sort of getting sold into a Telecaster. I want to talk about Telecasters. Because it's funny, you said when we were talking about random things you find in music stores, and you find all the big name stuff, and you're like, everybody wants a Daphne Blue Telecaster, except you, apparently. Except you. So, we're going to talk about Telecasters.
I think. Sorry, go on.
No. Have you sold yourself on just a straight Telecaster at this point?
Well, I know what I want. The only thing that's stopping me is I'm trying to find a deal. I'm trying to, the problem. The problem for me when I buy guitars, specifically guitars, it's easier for me with basses. Is one, I have a lot of guitars, and two, I'm not a guitarist. First, I'm a bass player, and that makes something in me reluctant to spend a big chunk of money on a guitar. When it's a bass, even though I've got countless ones, I can always be like, no, because you know what? As a bass player, this bass will make you better, and that's why you should get it. So I'm always able to talk myself into it. With guitar, it's harder, and especially when I have things like the Gres Mendocino. I have a lovely American professional jazz master on long-term loan from Fender. I've got a couple of really nice harmonies. Like, the fact is, actually, pretty much everything I record is on a Harmony Juno, because the P90s on that Harmony Juno are just amazing. Like they're incredibly expressive. Probably the best pickups and the most versatile pickups of any guitar I have. But I was kind of so recently I bought a Roger Waters signature P bass, and I was like,
That's right.
why didn't I do this years ago? It's got everything I want. My band wear black suits, and it's black with a single ply black guard, and I'm like, so it looks fantastic for that. It's got a huge '50s profile P bass neck on it. It's massive. I mean, it's 9.5 instead of 7.25, which did annoy me slightly, but not enough to not enough to throw me off completely. It's got a
Yeah.
brass nut. It's got a lacquered neck. It has a Seymour Duncan quarter pounder. Now, I also own a classic 50s P bass that has all of those modifications made to it, and the Roger Waters just comes like that as standard. And I was like, well, this bass is perfect, and I absolutely love it. And I'm kind of like, this is all I need for my band, for Polymath. This does everything. And I was like, that's nice. It's nice to have an instrument where there isn't, it's not the finish I want, but everything else I love. I know the radius thing, but the radius isn't enough to bother me. It basically has everything. And I was like, damn it, I don't have that with a guitar. The Grez Mendocino is obviously very lovely, but the Grez Mendocino is still a lone guitar that I went, oh yeah, this is fantastic. I'll keep hold of this. It's not something that I'd chosen. And I realized that, certainly you do this a lot. You pick guitars, you buy a lot of great guitars, and they're for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized most of the guitars I have are things that have either brands have given me in exchange for advertising, or things that have been loaned to me, and I've ended up being like, maybe I'll buy it. I've never sat and picked a guitar and been like, this is the guitar for me. This is my sound. And so I started doing that recently, and I realized that the thing that I want is a 52 Telecaster. That's the thing. That's how I want to sound. That's the neck profile that I like. Everything about it, I was like, it's that. I guess similar to liking 50s P basses, 50s Telecasters seem to, I want a big, thick, deep neck. Ideally a U or a V, would be fantastic. I want it to be wide. I want it to be lacquered. I want vintage lacquer. I love the sound of Telecaster single coils. I think you get such extremes from the two possible pickups. And when I first got into guitars, one of the first things I got was a Fender book, an old Fender book that had Fender basses and Fender guitars throughout the years. And I was always absolutely in love with the butterscotch Telecaster. I thought it looked fantastic. When I first saw the Snakehead telly, at the whichever museum it's at. Is it just in the California? Is it just in Fender in California? I can't remember, but
I don't remember either.
But I love that, and I was like, well, should I just get that? So that's what I'm currently on the hunt for. But I would also love something to be a little road worn. I'd like it to be worn in. I really don't want to get something poly if I can avoid it. I'd like this to just be a cool, vibey old Telecaster. I don't need heavy relic or anything, just something that's going to age with me. And that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Plenty of butterscotch tellies out there. Plenty of companies doing that sort of thing as well. It's not like I have to go for Fender, but tricky to find something that ticks all the boxes for less than $2,000. And so that was my hunt. I thought maybe a Bitzer was the answer. Maybe putting something together myself.
So here's where I come in and tell you, and this is I'm not going to tell you anything that you probably haven't already thought of, but this is where I've always come in. Like, I have a lot of guitars. I have listeners, I have way more guitars than any one person really needs, but that's fine. I'm a big believer, if it makes you happy and you can afford it, go for it, do your thing. But I'm also a believer in, I waited way too long to get this 335 that's behind me. I waited way too long. I justified not getting one a bunch of different ways. And then when I got that guitar, when I finally was in a situation that I could pick that guitar up and played it, and I was like, why did I waste so many years not getting the thing I wanted? When if I had just bought fewer guitars and saved that money, or sold things to get the thing I knew I wanted, I could have had that way, way sooner. And so that is always my advice now. So my advice now is, Joe, you've got a ton of basses, you've got a ton of guitars, sell some stuff, because what you need, what you want, not necessarily what you need, because this is never a conversation of need, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's never a conversation of need. Just get the Custom Shop 52 Telly. Just get a Custom Shop 52 Telly. I mean, that's what you want. That's what you've described. It's so hard to find a U or a V-shaped neck anymore.
Yeah.
They're always a C or a modern C.
Oh, God, Telecasters with modern Cs. I just don't understand the point. Just get yourself, I don't know, an Ibanez if that's the neck shape that you like. Crikey.
I don't even know what the neck shape on my Isbell Telecaster is, but it might be a C. It probably is a C.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know the specs you want.
Yeah.
And you could do a parts caster and put it all together yourself, and you might end up loving that. You might absolutely love that guitar. But this is the way I feel about parts casters. Any given part that you put together has the opportunity to make that guitar not great for you.
Yeah.
Like you get the wrong neck, or you get the body's not as resonant, or the pickups or the wiring. There's lots of opportunities to mess that up, and you can get it cheaper. My recommendation is, life's short. Sell the stuff you're not using and get with the thing you want.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think over the last couple of weeks I've come to the same conclusion. I feel like I don't want to do it in a parts caster. I've decided that because there'll always be something. There'll always be something that I'm not 100% happy with. But there are other options, I feel, not very many, than a custom shop, and the other option is obviously the road worn 50s Vintera. I think it really could hit almost all of what I want for a very reasonable price, and I don't mind Mexican Fenders when they're
me either.
done well. So that is an option. Problem is, the modern one only available in Sonic Blue. I think it's Sonic. It might be Daphne. I'm not sure. One of the two. I can't. It needs to be butterscotch. It has to be butterscotch or vintage blonde. One of the two.
Yeah.
Well,
luckily they did
that, yeah.
Between 09 and 19, they did make one in that finish.
Exactly. However, I'm sure everyone who purchased one realized what an absolutely stonking guitar they have, which is why you do not see them on the second-hand market. But I'm going to hold out a little while. I'm going to see if I can, I need to sell a few things anyway in order to be able to get it. But I think that's probably the answer. The old American vintage, also an option. I think they used to do a 52. They did, I think it might have been a 51 American vintage, and it came with the original selector controls, so you couldn't get both pickups on at once. It came with, so you could choose, you could fit whichever one you want, but you could have it either as what we have today, which is obviously neck, both pickups or bridge, or you could have it, is it neck, tone on, neck, tone off, and bridge. I think that's what the three options are. And I love
I'm
idea
Googling
of that.
Furiously.
Yeah, it's
because I really need to remember.
One of them, I think, is neck with some sort of tone cut. Anyway, which
so
the
position one is bridge pickup, neck pickup, and then neck dark.
Neck dark, yeah. Because of course the idea back then was the Telecaster was an all-in-one. It was going to do your bass parts as well. So you have a guitarist with a Telecaster playing guitar, and you have a guitarist with a Telecaster playing your bass parts by flipping to that control and picking a few root notes. I love that was the idea. It's almost like the Telecaster is the original Fanfret 8-string. That was that was.
There was a time when it was the peak of guitar innovation.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. But yeah, something like that would be fantastic. I just need to. You're right. I need to bite the bullet. I need to stop half-arsing all of my choices.
get the thing you know that you want and it's gonna be with you like long term, and it's not just a stopgap.
That, I think, is the
We're
difference between you and me. You are very good at being like, this is a fantastic guitar. I'm going to purchase it. It's $2,000. And I know that money's well spent because this is a great guitar. Whereas I'm very good at going, I could get that. But also there's this other company that do it for £500. I'll buy that and I'll buy another one next month because it wasn't exactly what I want. I basically have a lot of mediocre guitars. And I think you have a lot of guitars as well, but all your guitars are great. Whereas I tend to buy cheap and I buy twice.
Yep. Or thrice.
Exactly.
Or quatrice. I don't know what the next one is. I don't know how to. Anyway, yeah. So that's ultimately it. And I've known you long enough at this point that I've seen that, and I'm like, no, don't do the thing you've always done, because you're just repeating something you know you've done.
Yeah.
And but don't get me wrong. Like, I'm looking at right now that a Fender 50s road worn Telecaster in blonde, for $1,075 on Reverb. So, and then a 51 Fender American Vintage, the one you're talking about, you're looking at. I found one used for $1,800.
Yeah.
And I found a custom shop 52 reissue Telecaster, available in Springfield, Illinois, for $3,000.
Oh, there you go. Wow, that's a great price. $3,000 for a custom shop.
Yep.
This is it. I missed my opportunity back when I worked at the GAC guitar shop. We could buy custom shops at whatever, I assume what would be artist price, and it worked out about a 30% discount for staff on custom shops, which is very good.
Yeah.
And
you know someone at Fender, can he not hook you up?
yes, he can, absolutely. I could probably sort some sort of deal out. The problem is, back then, a custom shop was £2,500–3,000. Now, if you want to actually get like a proper custom shop, they're $4,500 now in pounds. I don't know what they are in the US. I don't know if we've got markup. We probably have markup over here.
Yep, probably, but that's probably still about right. So I will do a quick price comparison. Again, listeners, this is August 2023. If you're listening at some point in the future, first of all, thank you for going back to the past. I'm looking at, obviously I'm looking at Reverb prices, because I could pull up a shop that has them, but I'm just looking for the ones that are, I always feel like calling a Relic guitar brand new feels weird. But like brand new, I'm seeing a 52 reissue, $4,800. So
right,
I don't know what $4,800 is in a GBP. That is $3,761.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, for you.
I see. Yeah.
But that's a brand new price.
Right.
They get a little less expensive as you buy them used. I don't know how you can tell they're used. Again, Relic guitars. This is from someone who loves Relic guitars. Like, it feels weird to call something that's already pre-beat up new. Yeah, I see everything from like, I don't see anything below $3,000, but I see everything from like $3,000 up to. Here's a 52 Telecaster super heavy Relic aged no caster blonde for $5,450.
Yeah, that is a price.
That's a lot of money for a Telecaster.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money for a Telecaster. I just can't do it. But yeah, so that's always my recommendation. So, and I think your basses, you could do the same thing. Like, I have the same bass. We've talked about this before. I've played one bass for like, I don't want to talk about the fact that it's 18 years. I bought a couple of Squires recently.
Yeah, yes,
just to have other flavors. But yeah, I still have that 1P bass. That's my main bass. Yeah. So I don't know. I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I have to have a few core things for bass, because different things will require different things. But that's fine. I could definitely slim down the bass collection. But essentially, when I say a few chord things, I mean what I need is a jazz and a P. That's
That's it. That's it. But I also, as someone who plays in alternate tunings, it's sometimes a lot easier. I know you play in a couple of different tunings on bass as well.
yeah.
Yeah, and you tune down. And so it's nice to have, something in standard.
Mm.
At least for me, I've got to have at least a few guitars in standard tuning because I'll get calls to play with people and they're going to be in standard tuning. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to bring a guitar that I've tuned down to D standard or C standard to that gig.
Exactly that. I find it's not that I do covers shows, it's the amount of demos and jingles that I have to record. I don't want to do those in, any of the sort of Fripp tuning or D standard or drop C guitars that I have. So I have I have a bass that's just the bass for all the audio demos sort of thing, and then I'll have well, it's actually the Juno is virtually everything for guitar, and that's just in drop D because I like
simple
weird chords.
weird chords as you play a tune. I love when all the like in the early 2000s when I don't actually know how far back it goes, but like especially in the early 2000s when like all the new metal kids were playing in drop D and they were like feeling like they were so edgy. I'm like, you realize folk musicians invented this tuning, right?
This is it. Whenever so many people don't get that. Like I have a couple of friends who come around here a lot and play stuff, and they're always saying like, oh god, whenever I pick up one of your guitars, Joe, it's always in drop D, like you're going to play new metal. I'm like, no, it's not for new metal. It's like folky chords. It's like slidey stuff and things like that. It's just a good all rounder tuning for sort of that sort of thing. I don't ever do the old one finger bar chord.
Well, it's just like I like to tell all the 7-string aficionados that jazz guitarists did it first. That drives them crazy.
Yeah. I love finding those old jazz box Gibsons, 7-string jazz box Gibsons. That's like alternate reality sort of stuff when you see
right.
those.
They don't make any sense. Like this big jazz box with 7 strings. Yeah, it's I wish I could go back and grab one of those and just because now you don't see them. You just don't see them anymore because people who do have them, they're first of all there weren't that many of them. 2, they don't hit the market.
Right.
Or if they do, it's like super exclusive buyer deals and stuff like that. And I think I as adventurous as we've gotten with guitar, I feel like we were less adventurous than we were in the 60s and 70s still.
Sure. Well, I mean,
because
it happened with bass around the same time as well. Don't forget we had the bass 6, which certainly is having a resurgence now, but that was Fender literally trying to reinvent the instrument that they'd already invented. And around that time, we still haven't had a resurgence for this yet, but the Fender 5 came out. I think it was only made between 63 and 67. It was a 5-string bass with a high C instead of a low note. And it looked amazing. It's like an oversized Mustang, but it was a 34-inch scale, huge headstock. And it was them saying, here's 5-string bass, guys. You've got this extra high note for some reason, but fantastic. And of course, it didn't take off, so they discontinued it after a few years. I nearly bought one about a decade ago for $2,000 at a random guitar fair on a stand.
Oh.
And now you can't find them for less than $5.5 because, again, we're going through a sort of vintage resurgence, and people have realised how incredibly rare and cool that instrument is.
I feel like maybe I'm trying to rectify why they would do a high C rather than a low B. Maybe because the time period you're talking about, we won't even talk about the music because I'm not saying the music didn't warrant it, but maybe there were some worries about whether or not the speakers at the time, I don't know that amps were really ready for a low B. Maybe there was an issue there.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, dear listener, I think the Fender Bass 5 only had 15 frets. So I think the idea wasn't so much that you got additional notes; it was that you moved to them in a different way. So you don't move up; you move across. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, okay.
It might not be 15. It was a less than 21.
Oh, now I have to count them. Spot on, Joe. It is 15 frets. That is, I've never stopped to count them. I've seen these before.
Yeah.
Never counted them. Oh, that's wild. All right. So we are approaching the end of the main episode, though, and we didn't even really talk about a lot of things just because that's the way things go. So we're going to go over to Patreon and we're going to talk about some things more. I'm going to ask Joe the question that I don't think he knows yet that I ask all of my Patreon guests now. So he's not been able to prepare. So y'all can come over there and hear his answers. If you're not a Patreon supporter and you want to hear all this bonus content, you can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast and you can support this show. $3 $3 a month gets you the episode without ads, which there haven't been as many ads lately. So if you are a company or vendor that wants to sponsor some episodes, let me know. I've got some ad slots open. But also for $5 a month, you get ad-free and extra episodes with all of my guests. So, Joe, tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, if you want to listen to the Guitar Nerds podcast, it's, I imagine, as simple as it is to listen to this podcast. Just type Guitar Nerds into whatever your podcast provider is, and you can find us on all the social media platforms using that same handle. Join the Guitar Nerds Facebook group. That's where we have all our discussion. I definitely also have a Discord, but I just don't use it ever. In fact,
oh, I know, I'm in there.
Oh, are you? Wonderful. I wonder if anything happens there. I've been meaning to close it actually because I obviously just don't actually do anything on it. But yes, the Guitar Nerds Facebook group. Join that, dear listener, for discussion. That's always fun.
And I hear you're ramping up YouTube a little bit. Is that right?
I've done a few YouTube videos. I decided I wanted to start doing that sort of. Basically, I only stopped doing YouTube because Instagram seemed to be the place where people liked seeing our videos, and Instagram wants me to do a vertical video. So I'd started doing those, but I decided no, it's just a waste of time doing a vertical video. So Instagram can have horizontal videos, and that means I can put them on YouTube as well. So there you go.
Yeah. There you go. Awesome. There will be links to all that down below, or most of that down below. I'm not going to link to a Discord server. He's thinking about closing. That's the way that goes. So until next time, listeners, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Hope you have a great day. And until I see you again, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.